In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so welcome to another fruitful discussion with Mrs. M. So for today, we'll discuss the prelim module 2. So the prepared outline of discussion are the following. First, the importance of School of Criminology, or also known as schools of thought. Second, classical school. Third, neoclassical school. And lastly, the positivist school. So now let us first discuss the importance of studying the School of Criminology prior to the individual discussion of the schools of thought. Okay, please wait. Okay, so according to Sutherland, he mentioned that the system of thought, which consists of an integrated theory of causation of crime and of policies of control implied in the theory of causation. Question, what is theory of causation? When you say theory of causation, this refers to theories that explains why do crime exist. Okay, so in the study of criminology, there are many theories that supports why do crime exist. There are many theories that explains why do crime occur, and there are many theories that explains what are the factors that pushes a person to commit a crime, to exhibit a deviant behavior, to indulge in a sexual deviant behavior, so on and so forth. Furthermore, a school of criminology implies the following important points. First, the adherents of each school try to explain the causation of crime and criminal behavior in their own way of relying on the theory propounded by the exponent of that particular school. So meaning to say, each schools like classical school, the neoclassical school, the positivist school, and the other schools of thought, they do have their own individual theories under them that explains why does a crime occur, what are the factors that affects in the manifestation of a criminal behavior. Next. Second importance, each school of criminology suggests punishment and preventive measures to suit its ideology. Then lastly, each of the school represents the social attitude of people towards crime and the criminal in a given time. So now I will show you a short video presentation that explains the classical school. So, in addition to the school of thoughts, under neoclassical school, under the classical school, this school lays stress on crime and not on the person or criminal offender. So, in this approach, punishment, which is retributive and punitive in nature, meaning to say it's more on mutilation, it's more on branding, it's more on corporal punishment. So it's a standardized and proportioned to the gravity and the nature of offense. It assumes that every individual is a rational human being. So when we say rational human being, meaning to say knows the difference between right and wrong. Therefore, kung kabaloon sa kalainan between right and wrong, has free will and knows the law. In addition, under the classical school, it also mentioned that the general proposition of the school is to make undesirable acts painful. What are examples of undesirable acts? Like committing crimes. What's an example of crimes? Theft, murder, rape, adultery, so on and so forth. By attaching punishment to them to make the amount of pain entirely different so that the perspective of the criminal could make his calculation on it and make it just sufficient so that the pain would exceed the pleasure. Another, the imposition of punishment must be the same for all individuals, regardless of age, mentality, social status, and their personal conditions. The proponents of the classical school are the following. Una, si Cesar Becarria, who is the founder of the classical school. Another, Jeremy Bentham. So si Cesar Becarria is an Italian philosopher and a politician best known for his essay on crimes and punishment treaty. He believed that the behavior of the people with regards to their choice of action is based on hedonism. Meaning to say, human beings choose those actions that give pleasure and avoid those that brings pain. Unsay buot pasabot, in terms with the commission of crime, they prefer to focus on the pleasure rather than thinking on the possible consequences of their action as long as mas more ang pleasure. Okay? What do you mean by hedonism? It means that every human action is motivated by the pursuit of pleasure. Okay, like psychological hedonism or oath to be motivated by the pursuit of pleasure, like the moral hedonism. So note that moral hedonism presumes that it is possible not to be motivated by the pursuit of pleasure, but that is it is unwise to do so. So the question is, what is the difference between psychological hedonism and a moral hedonism? So let's see the difference. Moral or ethical hedonism, it's just the same. Okay. So what's the difference between the two? When you say psychological hedonism, this views that humans are psychologically attracted in such a way that we exclusively desire pleasure. While when we say ethical hedonism is the view of our fundamental moral obligation to maximize pleasure or happiness. So yes, that is correct. So when you say pleasure, it focuses to the word happiness. So when you say ethical hedonism, this is most associated with the ancient Greek philosopher. So who thought that our life goal should be to minimize the pain and maximize the pleasure. Okay? In addition, okay? All right. Please wait. So what are examples of psychological hedonism? Like for example, you want to have a brand new phone. Okay? You want to have a brand new phone but you do not have the money. So sa may mong buhaton, you will think of stealing money. So, put pasabot in the psychological hedonism, if you will focus on your pleasure, which is to have a new phone, ang may tabo, you will, you will neglect the possible consequences na kung madakpan ka, okay, if you will be caught stealing, posible ka nga mapriso. Possibly that you will be arrested, you will be detained, and a criminal action will be filed against you. So that's the problem with hedonism when you focus more on pleasure rather than pain. So that is why Cesar Becarria mentioned that we human beings has free will. So the moment that we pursue on our pleasure without even considering the possible legal consequences, you need to face the consequences of your action, which is you will be subjected to criminal justice system. Okay? So in addition, the classical school itself, okay? The classical school itself is a broad label for a group of thinkers for crime and punishment in the 18th and the 19th century. So its most proponent members, as what I mentioned, are Cesar Becarria and Jeremy Bentham, who shared the idea that criminal behavior could be understood and could be controlled as an outcome of human nature. But then again, it can only be controlled if there is a punishment that equates to the crime committed, which should be imposed regardless to the age, the mentality, the social status, and their personal condition. Another thing, human beings were believed, as what I've mentioned, hedonistic. So, of course, acting in terms of their self-interest. Yes, that is correct. When you say hedonism, part of its definition is that we focus more on our self-interest rather than looking at the general happiness. So, but then again, ang rational, capable of considering which course of action was really in their self-interest. Yes, that is true. The moment that you decide to commit, the moment that you think of doing something that is against the law, like mangawat ka, you will commit adultery, you will commit robbery, you will commit rape, murder, so on and so forth, under the classical school, in respect to free will, prior to the commission of crime, imo na nang gihuna-huna. That is why it was mentioned earlier that part of the example of theory under the classical school is the rational choice theory. Rational choice theory clearly explains that before a human being commits a crime, iya pa ng huna-hunaon. Iya pa nang i-calculate whether it's worthy to commit the crime or dili. Is the pleasure worthy enough or dili? So if ever he decides of committing the crime, then kinahanglan siyang mapanisyan. Another, a well-ordered state, therefore, would construct laws and punishment in such a way that people would understand peaceful and non-criminal actions to be their self-interest through strategies of punishment based on deterrence. When you say deterrence, guys, it refers to the giving of lesson, okay? The giving of lesson. But then again, there are two types of deterrence. So allow me to share with you. Okay, deterrence in so when you say deterrence, it is a theory under classical form that holds that crime is deterred by the threat of punishment. So the potential gain of crime is weighted in some fashion against punishment and the probability of punishment, and the person decides whether or not to commit a crime. So there are many types of deterrence. So in general, again, it gives lesson. So the two types of deterrence are the following. You do have the general deterrence, and the other one is the specific deterrence. So what's the difference between a general deterrence and a specific deterrence? General deterrence meaning to say that the giving of lesson, okay, of the crime committed is not only given directly to the perpetrator, but even those people who are looking, who serves as an audience, people who are would-be criminals, who say would-be criminals na ay tendency to commit a crime, na ay tendency to become a criminal, or those people who committed a crime but fortunately they are not yet subjected to the criminal justice system, probably because the crime was not discovered or the crime was not reported. So by asa man nato makita ang general deterrence ana? So by looking at, like for example, the punishment given is by whipping, meaning to say give-whip ang likod. So if that is an example of corporal punishment received through whipping, I will show you an example, an image. Okay, so this is an example of a corporal punishment by whipping. So, kana? So, if that is the example and it is done in public, so asa man nato makita ang general deterrence, ana? Okay. The idea nga ikaw as a non-criminal, a law-abiding citizen, or a would-be perpetrator, or a person who committed a crime but not yet arrested because, again, as what I've mentioned, probably because the crime was not reported or was not discovered, ang may tabo, maguna-una ka nga ay, I will not commit the crime because I do not want to be subjected to this kind of punishment, to this kind of corporal punishment by whipping. So if that is the case, na ingon ana nga learning nga mahitabo diha mosulod ang general deterrence. But when you say specific deterrence, it means that it is directly the person who committed the crime ang naka-learn sa lesson. Again, it is directly the person who committed the crime ang naka-learn og lesson. Like for example, siya may naka-commit og crime. So therefore, naka-learn ni siya og specific deterrence. Nga moingon siya, I will possibly kung maka-learn siya, moingon siya siyang kagalingon nga I will not repeat the crime committed because I do not want to be subjected through this kind of corporal punishment by whipping. So again, let me repeat myself. There are two types of, again, what is the meaning of deterrence? Deterrence means giving of lesson. So there are two types of deterrence. You do have the general and you do have the specific. What's the difference between the two? General deterrence, meaning to say even the people who are looking, okay? The people are looking, the audience, okay, who are looking nga gibuhat ang corporal punishment, they will learn a lesson that they will not commit any crime at all. Kaya nga naman, they do not want to be subjected to this kind of punishment. On the other hand, when you say specific deterrence, the learning of lesson is directly absorbed by the person who committed the crime. Namaingon siya, oh, I will not commit this crime again, or I will not commit any types of crime again. Kaya nga naman, I do not want to be subjected to any forms of corporal punishment. All right? So in addition to the classical school, si Cesar Bonesa Marches de Becarria, or also known as um, Bonesa Becarria, who is known as the founder, again, it is Cesar Becarria, ang founder of modern criminology. So again, his greatest contribution to the science of criminology was that he was for the first time, proceeded with the study of criminals on the scientific basis and reached certain conclusions from which definite methods of handling crime and criminals could be worked out. That is why, ang iyang gibuhat, he created the essays of crimes and punishment. All right. So now let's have a short tour sa life of Cesar Becarria. Okay, so Cesar Becarria, or ang iyang full name is Cesar Bonesana or Bonsana Marches or Marquez de Becarria was born in March 15, 1738, and he died in November 28, 1794, Milan. So he is an Italian criminologist and also an economist. So was celebrated volume on the reform of the criminal justice system. So nganong born or reform of the criminal justice system? Earlier, I've shown you pictures or images of the corporal punishment. So as promised, I will give a short tour about the creation, okay, the creation of the essays of crime and punishment treaty by Cesar Vicaria. So what motivated him to create such treaty? So before magod, ang naitabo was that nag-exist na gyud ang punishment. Yes, tinuod, nag-exist na gyud ang punishment. And in fact, people before, they believe in witches. So the common types of punishment that were given before, regardless of the gravity of offense committed, is by whipping, by torture, okay, by humiliation, pakaulawan ka sa public, by this one, by hanging, okay, or by the cutting of head, so on and so forth. So ang pangutana, what motivated Cesar Becarria to create such treaty? Nahitabo man gud ani is that whenever a person is an accusation is given, okay, being accused of committing a certain crime like petty theft, or ibutang na to murder or rape or prostitution. Yes, prostitution was a crime before. Until now, it is still a crime. But then, unfortunately, those women who are considered as a human trafficked victim, ang nahitabo, they are not considered as a perpetrator, but rather a victim under human trafficking law. Okay? So, again, ang nahitabo, when an allegation or an accusation is given, a complaint is raised, ang may tabuan na the person is arrested and will be brought to court. Asa man nagkaproblema ani? Walay proper coded laws sa una. So when I say walay proper coded laws, walay basihanan ang mga judges before as to the proper procedure and the type of punishment should be given. So ang naitabo sa una, prior to the creation, before the creation of the essays of crime and punishment, bisag ang imong gikawat o sa kabuk ng supas, you will be subjected to corporal punishment. Or ang imong crime committed is very heavy, but because you belong to the aristocrat family, or you belong to the elite family, so on and so forth, you're rich, ang may tabo, even if the crime committed is very heavy, the punishment that will be provided is light or no punishment at all. Unfortunately, ang naitabo po sa una, prior to the creation of the Essays of Crime and Punishment by Cesar Becarria, ang naitabo is that even if bata pa ka, even if babayi ka, even if tigulang nakakaayo, you are placed in one cell. So, meaning to say, no proper segregation of inmates, no proper segregation of detainees according to their gender, according to the age, according to the gravity of offense. Ang pinakaparat pagyud ani is that wala pa due process of law. Wala gani proper coded laws, due process pa kaha. So because nga walay due process, ang nahitabo the person who is facing an accusation, they are not given the opportunity to defend themselves. They're not given the opportunity to present pieces of evidence that will prove that they are innocent of the allegation filed against them. They're not given the opportunity to testify in favor to themselves. So that's the problem before. That is why it forced and motivated Cesar Becarria to create the treaty. Okay, so now I will show you a short video clip about the evolution of the evolution and the creation of the coded law during the time of Cesar Becarria, known as the age or century of enlightenment. The enlightenment took place.
and a reactive approach. The death
All right. So that's it. So as you can see, the primary reason why Cesar Beccaria was considered as the first prime mover of the century of enlightenment because he created that treaty itself, the essays of crime and punishment. So it was very clear in the video that before the judges simply creates their own law because there were no proper coded laws. So the beauty with the essays of crime and punishment is that nakabutang na dira kung unsa nga if they will do this, this will be the title of the crime and this will be the equivalent punishment of the crime committed. Yes, that is correct. That law should be applied, that the law and the punishment should be applied equally. So the other advantage of the essays of crime and punishment is that na siya equivalent crime committed. Like for example, if the crime is theft, maura ni ang gikwawat, so therefore this will be the equivalent punishment. If the crime is murder, this is the equivalent punishment, so on and so forth. So as you can see, ang gi ang gifu ang gi advocate should pagmaayo ni Cesar Becarria is that there must be due process of law. There must be justice. That the punishment that should be given should equate to the crime committed. The punishment should be given equally, regardless of the status of the person, that regardless of the age of the person, regardless of the gender of the person. Maunay nakatsada sa essays of crime and punishment. That was again created by Cesar Becarria. But then again, na siya mga gitawag na to mga disadvantages. Like for example, I have mentioned earlier nga niingon siya that it should be the law itself should be applied regardless of the age. Nganong nakakuha man og mga haters si Cesar Becarria when he mentioned that the laws itself should be applied to everybody nga who committed the crime regardless of the age. Kaya nga naman, he failed to acknowledge that there are certain individuals nga who looks old but their mental age is young. Like for example, those nga suffering from mental retardation. Isang moabot pa na sila 50 anyos, ang ilahang IQ or mental age is only equivalent to 7 years old, 6 years old, 2 years old, so on and so forth. So he failed to acknowledge mo nang naa siya mga gitawag nga basher, hater, or the formal term is critics. Another thing, he failed to acknowledge na ang mga bata, okay, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, below the age, below the legal age, he failed to acknowledge, he failed to consider na ang mga bata, those of young age, cannot distinguish cannot distinguish properly the difference between right and wrong. That there are instances that because of young age, where it results to immaturity, dili kayo sila makonsider natong rational human being. They cannot really exercise the proper use of free will. Remember, because of immaturity, because of young age, it results to immaturity of making decisions, immaturity of emotions. That's the reason why nganong makakommit sila og crime. And in the contemporary setup, our juveniles are protected by law. Okay? Even if they are already considered as, again, contemporary, meaning to say as of present, okay? Even our mga child in conflict with the law. Unsa man ang child in conflict with the law? These are children nga nakakommit na og crime, waiting for investigation, waiting for trial, waiting for judgment. These are considered as, again, child in conflict with the law. So even if you are a child in conflict with the law, because you've committed a crime and unfortunately your age is above 15 but below 18, that you have committed a crime with discernment. O say discernment, meaning to say, nakabalo ka sa nature sa imuhang gibuhat, that it is against the law, but then again, you've pursued your pleasure. You've decided to pursue your hedonistic side. You focus more on pleasure. So if that is the case, even if you are in child in conflict with the law in terms with the contemporary setup or present juvenile justice system here in the Philippines, you are still protected by law. Nga naman, under Republic Act 9344, okay, the best interest of the child is ang main focus of the government. Again, the best interest of the child is the main focus of the government. In fact, even if the law itself, 9344, was already amended by Republic Act 10630, an act strengthening the juvenile justice system in the Philippines, still the provision or section of RA 9344, which states about the best interest of the child, this intensify pa pag maayo karon. Okay? So now let's continue. So again, who is Jeremy Bentham? Jeremy Bentham is an English jurist, a philosopher, and a legal social reformer. So like Becarria, okay, he was also concerned with achieving the greatest happiness of the greatest number. So he referred to his philosophy of social control as utilitarianism. When you say utilitarianism, it means the good is what produces the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people, including oneself, even if it causes unhappiness of oneself. I will give you a very good example that displays properly utilitarianism. Okay. In this time of pandemic, we all know that in this time of pandemic, our movement and celebration of occasions are very much limited. Most especially atong implementation of ECQ. Kaya nga naman, during ECQ or enhanced community quarantine here in Negros Oriental and in other provinces and cities in the Philippines, ang naitabo is that we were not allowed to roam around the city. Okay? Roam around the municipality unless the purpose is very important, like mo purchase kag mga essential goods like groceries, so on and so forth. In fact, bisag a birthday ka, you are not even allowed to celebrate with your friends. You may celebrate, but then again, the number of people, the visitors are very limited, and in fact, you can only have or invite mga direct relatives rin mo or your immediate family, in short. And then if you want to have the bedyoke, kalami magyud ng mag-celebrate ang birthday nga masigig singal, okay, you were allowed to do so, but then again, the time is limited that you will need to stop the videoke at 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. Asa man makita ato ang utilitarianism on the given example. Like even if birthday nimo and you want to extend abot og kadlawon og kinanta, but you cannot do that. Kaya nga naman, we do have an existing law that protects the happiness of the greater population, which is you need to abide with our ECQ guidelines, including the curfew, including the shutdown of celebration when it reaches 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. Unsay buot pasabot? If you will not follow the concept of utilitarianism because you will insist of having the videoke and the emergence of many people kay moabot og 200 imong bisita, ang mahitabo in your celebration with the help of the concerned citizen nga inyo ang silingan or kinsa man dagay na, they will call the police and then a patrol car will come to your house, to your celebration, and tell you to stop the video, okay, to let the people go home. Kaya nga naman, to avoid the spread of the virus. Okay? Another thing, Aside from the classical school na atay gitawag nga neoclassical school. So with regards to your neoclassical school, it provides a slight modification with regards to the classical school approach. Kaya naman, kung sa giingon diri, it argues that since children and lunatics cannot calculate the pain, cannot calculate the pleasure, they should be regarded as criminals. As such, they should not be punished. Okay. If you can still remember, unsa matoy giingon nato ganina under our classical school. Ang giingon sa classical school ganina is that we human beings, sorry for my background, unsa matoy giingon sa classical school earlier, that since we are rational human beings, we can calculate the difference between right and wrong. Whatever we do, it is committed with full volition of will. So if you will insist of committing a crime, therefore you should be punished because you committed the act with free will. When you say free will, full volition of will, walay ni pugos ni mga buhaton ni sa imuhang kabubuton. And then also pa may giingon ni Jeremy Bentham ni Cesar Becarria earlier. Sorry again for my background. Unsa man to iyang giingon? He mentioned that the punishment should be applied to individuals equally, regardless of the age, the status, okay, the mental health, so on and so forth. Mao na siya problema with the classical school. But in your neoclassical school, niingon siya diya nga, yes, it is true, we are all rational human beings. We can differentiate the difference between right and wrong. But then again, ang mga bata, ang mga lunatics, pasabot ang lunatics, katong mga buang. Children ug ang mga buang, they cannot differentiate. They cannot calculate the difference between right and wrong. They cannot calculate the difference between pain and pleasure under the doctrine of hedonism. So therefore, since they cannot calculate the difference between right and wrong, they cannot exercise free will. Therefore, children and lunatics should not be subjected to punishment. In short, in neoclassical school, there is a crime, but there is no criminal. Again, I will repeat, there is a crime, but there is no criminal. Okay, so I will provide an additional discussion with this one and also in the positivist theory in my second recorded vid. So if ever you do have questions or clarifications, please feel free to message or comment down. God bless. Bye, guys.